In past episodes, we've had the special privilege of featuring homes inside and out, from the landscaping and architecture to the furniture and artwork pieces. This episode takes a little bit of a different twist. Keep watching as we feature in particular collectibles and various furniture pieces with a great history behind them. For example, this old sideboard that's over 100 years old. When we come back, we meet the eclectic collector and expert himself, Mr. Ainsley Henriques. I'm Nadia, and this is House Proud. Welcome back. With me is the eclectic collector and affectionately called President of All Things, Mr. Ainsley Henriques. Mr. Henriques,
hi, Nadia.
Hi, and welcome to House Proud.
Thank you very much.
Tell me, how did you get involved with your whole collecting fetish?
Well, I grew up in a country house in St. Thomas, and we were surrounded as children with lots of old things, things which are now considered to be part and parcel of our heritage, you know, flat irons and all sorts of old artifacts which are no longer used. And eventually I went to an estate auction way back and got involved with the idea of collecting.
Okay. Well, in our past conversations, you've identified that in furnishing your home, one should ideally start in the bedroom.
I think it's the most important place, especially when you're leaving your parents' home, you're going into a relationship and you want to make sure that you have a good bedroom and especially a good bed.
Well, shall we enter
Why
into
not?
the master suite? After you. Well, since we've already mentioned the bed, tell me a bit about this piece.
Well, it's a lovely old Jamaican mahogany bed. It was probably made in the late 19th century and it came from a North Coast great house. This, of course, is a particularly lovely feature because this is a lovely carved acanthus, and of course the sides of the posts with the inlays are also quite remarkable. So it's really quite a lovely bed, and of course it has a headboard. The old double beds in Jamaica were made from over the years as double beds, or the old four-poster beds were made as double beds, and some of them have been expanded to become larger because most people like queen or king size beds. But this is, I think, fairly authentic. One or two other things in here which are of interest are reproductions, actually. This is a reproduction of the bench that you'll find at Devon House, and that's a reproduction of a Victorian marble top table in Jamaican mahogany. The lamps which are on the night tables, and you notice the height of this bed does not allow it to have the normal night table, but these are typical lamp tables which would have existed before electricity, so that the lamp would have been used for the purposes of going to bed and then blown out because they're at the right height.
Right.
And those lamps, of course, are actually pineapple lamps, which were handmade by, unfortunately, a late, wonderful, skilled Jamaican turner. They're quite unique.
How old are the lamps?
They're not that old. They're probably, I think they're about 30 years old.
I've noticed this vanity table or dresser. I call it vanity table, but
it's a nice piece. I would not say it's an exceptional piece, but you can tell from the pulls that it is a fairly old piece because those are, I believe, the authentic campaign pulls that would have been on it. I would think it's probably early 20th century, but and of course the cane seat chair in front of it is again the sort of thing that an awful lot of people did not keep because they said it was old things. Well, today I think they're becoming much more collectible.
Well, I guess we should move now into the other bedroom in the
Certainly.
house that has other fabulous pieces. Mr. Henriques, tell us a bit now about the pieces that we can find in this room.
Well, if we start with this is really a classic mix and match because what you have here is a demi-press with a marble top, and on top of this is a tabletop dressing mirror which doesn't really belong to the set but actually makes a very nice bedroom feature. And so here you can mix antiques and create something which is practical at the same time, also aesthetically nice.
I see you have an old trunk. I mean, I have one of those at home too from when I was a little girl, and I think it was my mom's. But tell me a bit about yours.
Well, this one is a steamer trunk, and they were used when people traveled by boat or by steamship, and they were able to pack their clothes in this instead of suitcases. And they carried all sorts of things because voyages in those days lasted for days. In fact weeks. And so that's what the kind of storage facility that they used to take on trips like that. And following that, we have a reproduction again of a Victorian marble top table. This one's done in mahogany.
Out of curiosity, what is the better kind of wood, in your experience, the better kind of wood to use to make or manufacture furniture?
Well, the finest wood perhaps in the world is a Jamaican mahogany. This and rosewood are perhaps two of the most sought after cabinet woods that are used. Unfortunately, we have cut down all our mahogany forests, so we have almost nothing left.
Oh dear.
But this has been going on from the early 18th century when the forests were being cut down to plant sugarcane. And unfortunately, we haven't planted back any of our mahogany in any significant way. But this is, of course, again, another very interesting mahogany bed that comes out of the mahogany of, we think, Jamaica, because of the kind of barley twist that exists, and as well as the Prince of Wales plumes that you find on the headboard.
That is so pretty.
And of course, above the bed head is an Edna Manley woodcut, which is quite lovely.
So far, you've mentioned only local artwork. Is that the majority of the pieces that you have in your house?
Yes, yes. We have been excited by our own talent in our country.
Yay.
And we really haven't sought to collect an awful lot of items from outside.
I'm glad, because we do need to support our local artists.
Absolutely,
Definitely.
and they're very talented.
Yes, extremely. So I guess we can mosey on now to
Certainly.
the other room where we see even more fabulous pieces. And here we have yet another 4-post bed.
Interestingly, you notice this one has even shorter posts, and the definition on the headboard, the carving on the headboard is not as classic or detailed correctly as the other two. So this tends to give us the feel that this is perhaps more of what I call a creolized bed, something made not necessarily for the great house, but something which has been made more for the person who was going to use it for themselves. And so it in itself is a classic because it has makes a statement of that nature, that it is in fact a person making a bed for themselves. So it's really quite a nice little piece. And then we move over here to what is perhaps an early 20th century Art Deco style, bow front type dressing table or chest and mirror. And what is interesting about this, if I take out this drawer very quickly, is to show you that it does have a sense of age by using the size of the type of the dovetails that are incorporated, and the base of the drawer, which is not plywood, but in fact actual solid wood, shaped to be able to fit here, and you can feel the different plane marks that exist on it. So it then helps to tell you what kind of age this is. This is certainly not a...
And what's this made of?
This is mahogany.
Mahogany.
And the drawers are cedar. And the pulls are classic glass pulls of that period.
Original. Nice. And then we have to the right side of it.
To the right of it, we have an interesting little desk which folds up.
A desk.
There you have it.
There's the key. Oops. So one would sit and do their studies.
Correct, whatever, right.
File their books and stuff, papers,
Correct.
pens and that kind of thing.
And then when you're finished,
Just lock it back up.
lock it up. And
Nice
save
space saver. Yeah. Well, don't go away, because when you come back, you're going to see more eclectic pieces in Mr. Henriques' living room, veranda, bathroom. God, there's just so much to see. Don't go away now. If you've just joined us, you're watching House Proud. With me is Mr. Ainsley Henriques, eclectic collector.
That name is going to stick.
Yes. Okay, so we're at the actual entrance of your house, and this piece sits nicely at the front door, off of the front door. What is this piece about, Mr. Henriques?
This is really a piece I collected at an auction some years ago, and I've been able to get as close to perhaps suggesting that it came out of Philadelphia at the end of the made in Philadelphia, that area at the end of the 19th century, and we're judging by the type of carving and the quality of the marble that is on the piece and the wood that it is made from. Other than that, we really don't know how it came to Jamaica, but it was just a nice haul piece that we felt that was important to collect, and it fits nicely here.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And it, of course, you're able to put a lot of things on it for display.
You also have a powder room right at the entrance, and in here you have some items that we really don't use anymore or see anymore. They're so old-fashioned. For example, the wash basin.
These are reflective of old Jamaica, because what you have is the wash basin when there was no running water, the jug, soap dish, and then of course you have the old commode, the wooden commode, which is like a chair with a seat that raises, and inside of that would be a chimney. So these are typical of the old Jamaica, and of course the most appropriate place for them is a powder room.
Right. Back at the entrance, we just had to stop at this particular piece. It's an old gramophone. Again, you don't see these anymore with the technology we have nowadays.
Well, today we have iPods and all sorts of other things that play music, but this of course is one of the old wind-up ones, and one of the reasons we acquired it is because the case is rather lovely. Although it doesn't work, it needs a needle, and I'm not even sure if the spring is actually good, but it really is quite a lovely case, and of course you can put things on it, and it really fills a corner. So again, it's part of the concept of just collecting things which I think reflect our past and at the same time are enjoyable.
Yes. So we move forward into your living area. So we're in your living room, and I mean, you have so many different pieces in here, so take it away.
Take it away. Yes. Well, you have a couple of chaise lounges, single and the double, and these are old Jamaican pieces, probably the Victorian era, and they're quite lovely mahogany, and if you can, as you can tell from good quality mahogany, they're very well, good quality cabinetry making, they're well finished. So from that point of view, they're quite enjoyable, and we do use them, and of course in the back are some coppers. The piece de resistance, I think, is really this coffee table in the middle, which is actually one of the a later piece of the very well known Jamaican cabinet maker and in fact furniture, shall we say, furniture designer of the 20th century, T.T. Jackson. And this is a coffee table that he made for us on mission. Fortunately, before he died, although he lived into his 90s, and his work is spectacular.
Oh, Mr. Henriques, look at this one here now. It's a kettle.
Yes, it's a copper kettle. I found it under my grandmother's house. It had been used for the mixing and carrying of mortar, and that was many, many years ago, and it was probably one of the first pieces I ever collected, and cleaned it off to the best of my ability. It needs a little bit of a shine up now, but it's a lovely old copper kettle.
What is it sitting on?
It's sitting on a marble top table, a Victorian marble top table, and that sort of fits into the Victorian theme of this corner.
And this particular piece, Mr. Henriques, in our previous discussions, you mentioned some historical things about it.
Yes, this is actually a piece which was acquired from a diplomat He claims he bought it in Poland, and he was going back to another assignment, and he was selling off this particular piece, and we thought it was a particularly lovely piece. And one of the things about it is, you notice that this is in fact a veneer, a matching veneer that has been applied here, which is of a different wood, which highlights this particular feature. And in here again, you have inlays. So that's all part and parcel of the craftsmanship that this demonstrates. The other particular interesting feature of this furniture is that it pulls down entirely and can be packed flat.
Oh,
it's really quite remarkable. And of course, there are one or two things in here which are, of course, heirloom value. I'll show you a particular piece which is interesting, and that is this little glass vase, which was actually made and brought for me by the late Tino Barovia. And it was made in the Barovia Glassworks in Italy, which was his family's original.
Oh, wonderful.
And in fact, one of the oldest pieces of glass you can find in an encyclopedia from Italy is from the Barovia production.
Well, you have also a dining area that we still have to see.
Yes, and there are one or two pieces in there which are perhaps of interest.
Let's just check it out.
Now, this is a sideboard, and it's a classic sideboard in the sense of, you look at the decorations here. These are typical of that type of period, and this curve here and the thickness of the lid are all typical of the period. Probably early 20th century. And of course, a couple of things which unfortunately don't have the mantle or the shade are two old Tilly lamps, which were the old method of lighting homes, pumping them and getting the right flame.
You have used the sideboard to display some of your silver
collectibles.
But what
silver
was a
plate.
sideboard originally used for?
Well, it would have been used to put the hot plates and the dishes to be able to serve the food.
dinner.
Yeah.
Okay. And next to the sideboard, you have this magnificent piece, this dining room set.
Nice dining table, yes.
What is it made from?
Well, it's mahogany, and the chairs are particularly nice, sort of Duncan Five style chairs.
The piece that's adjacent to the table that houses all of your glassware, I had to say earlier that it looked like a Chinese pagoda, the top of it anyway, because of how it was shaped. But what is that made of? And I really like the crafts work done on it.
It's nice. It has that lovely barley twist sort of outside post and the beaded framing around the glass. It's quite a unique piece. I've never seen anything quite like it.
We are in your veranda now, and I'm standing by this really authentic antique
Stand-up piano.
stand-up piano. But I know this piece in particular you really want to mention to our viewers. What is so special about this piece?
Well, I think they're wrongly named Spanish jars. They're actually Italian olive oil jars, and there is in fact an expert in Jamaica on Italian olive oil jars, and Jamaica does have probably the largest collection of olive oil jars. And on this jar, you'll see the seal of the merchant, who in fact was responsible for shipping this to Jamaica. And you can tell from the seal who the merchants were, in a sense. And this is a nice example of it. And of course, before electricity and before any other form of oil, olive oil was what we used to light our lamps in
Okay.
17th and 18th centuries.
I didn't know that.
As we become more conscious of the very valuable legacy that we have inherited from our forebears, we need to be able to recognize that we have to preserve them, protect them, and record them for posterity.
Here, here. Well, also, I mean, I've noticed pieces of sculpture, wooden. You told me that your wife, from her travels, she also collected items.
Yes, these come from all over the place. I think these are actually from Kenya. Don't ask me particularly. I think that's a woody miller in the back.
This one here. He's so cool. He looks like a monkey man.
But you know, these are things that you buy, and sometimes they become mementos for where you have been. So I can't particularly identify myself, particularly what any of these relate to. They just happen to be the sort of things you leave.
Collectibles.
They're collectible.
Right. Well, stay tuned. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Mr. Henriques, tell me about this piece that is in front of us.
This is just an ordinary Haitian chest, hand-carved Haitian chest depicting the life of ordinary Haitian people. And in that sense, it's an important little piece because it highlights the genre of a local community. Just as some of our own carvings and our own production highlight some of our own aspirations and our important collectibles.
Your knowledge on antiques and furniture is so vast, and tell me a bit about your company, because you do own a manufacturing furniture company.
Yeah, we do antique reproductions. We do reproductions, we design and we manufacture and we repair and we restore furniture.
What's the name of the company?
It's Contract Furniture Makers.
Okay. From my knowledge as well as the viewers, what is an antique?
Anything over 100 years, over 75 years become antiques, depending on whether it's furniture or it's silver or it's china. What is really important today is not so much the classification of age, because the more we preserve things, the older they become in collections. What is important is really, I think, the intrinsic value that they represent, who the designer was, who the manufacturer was, what the provenance of the particular piece. Many of us today are, because we have television, such as this program, are able to watch the antique road shows.
Right.
And so we get a lot of information as to what is important in collecting. And so the fact that it's a particular antique is not as important as the fact that it's collectible, it has a provenance, it has a demand, and the demand really adds to the value. In other words, if it's of scarce supply, if it's a one of a kind, it'll be much more valuable perhaps than something which is made in mass.
Tell me, where can one go to collect all these magnificent pieces of furniture?
First thing you must have is patience, because things come up in the most unusual places. But what we started 15 years ago is the Antique Fair, which takes place every November, and this year November 19th and 20th at the Campion College Linda Auditorium. And all the antique dealers come there and have booths in which they display their wares for sale. And so people who have never seen an antique collection in their life are more than welcome to attend the Antique Fair.
On a tips note, how to take care of my furniture?
We recommend wax or cream polishes and a fair amount of edible grease, a good set of, good rubbing and wiping off, and allowing the patina to develop. And that in itself is important, because many people do restoration, they remove the original patina, which in fact destroys the value of the piece of furniture.
Oh.
So one has to be very careful about when you're doing restoration.
Definitely.
And you should really go to people who know what restoration business is all about.
Professionals. Thank you so much for inviting me to your home.
Nadia, it's been a pleasure, and I really hope that we encourage a lot more people to become collectors.
This is Nadia signing out for House Proud. Until next time, may God bless your home.